different storms mixed up. Irene, Sandy. I mean, I don't get everything about them mixed up, but I get mixed up what exactly happened with each one of them. But that was God, and David, does things like this. I think we all could, but there are times he's been in heavy traffic, and really, he needed to get to some place. It wasn't about him, something important, and he just like shout in God's name. He'd command the traffic to move, and it just moved. And I know David well enough to know that his testimony about such things is legitimate. There are people who I hear talking about things that sound like that, and I don't always necessarily think there's anything to it. Anyway, we can learn more, we can develop more, we can become more disciplined, we can do all kinds of things, and there are a lot of things we should do. But what we don't have to do is make ourselves into something that we do not feel we are yet before God can do things with us that we're convinced we could never do, and even worse, convinced that He could never do with us. Not believing you personally can do a certain thing, well, that might just be based on good evidence. Like, I can't jump 10 feet into the air. God could cause me to be able to if there was a purpose to it. But we don't have to be what we would demand in order to do things that God wants to do through us. We just need to believe Him and then put one foot in front of the other sometimes when He asks us to go. And that's, I guess, when it gets more interesting, is when we go. So, where to go from there? I liked what Judah shared, by the way. I appreciated what John shared. I don't know if you asked if that, that gave the right to become children of God could be translated as gave the power. Having a true right, especially in the context of God giving a right, I would say is being given power, but the power that makes us children of God is what? Yeshua came, He gave Himself, He washed us clean, He rose from the dead, and that declared Him to be the Son of God with power. And so all that power is behind the right we've been given to become children of God. And what do you think of my new glasses, by the way?
I was actually noticing them.
I classified using a heat gun to change the shape of your bows so that your glasses don't slide as acceptable Sabbath work this morning. It's now no longer among the 39 prohibited forms of work on Shabbat. But only if you're in the situation I was in. Anyway, I'm sure you'll accept that as a legitimate rabbinic halakhic ruling, right? What?
I said I would.
So a lot happened in this week's Torah portion. And I don't think I can go into too much of it, but because I don't think I have time. But you know, this week's Torah portion is named after a woman. Most Torah portions aren't even named after a man, but I think it's notable that it's named after a woman. And also in this week's Torah portion, I mean, both Abraham and Sarah die. And Ishmael and Isaac bury Abraham. There's a building built. I don't know a lot about it at the site of Machpelah. And to this day, there might be times when it's problematic, but Muslims and Jews pray alongside each other at that site. It's very important to them both because, well, you know, Abraham is the father of Ishmael, and he's the father of Isaac, and he's the father of all those who have the faith of Abraham. He's the father of many nations, and he's the father theoretically of people from every last nation. I don't know if there are any people groups that would be referred to as nations that have no believers in them. There may still be some. I don't actually know. But in a sense, you could almost call him the father of all the nations through faith, because there is going to be this great throng of people from every tribe and tongue and nation. And those in that throng will all be believers in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And therefore, Abraham is their father through faith, whether they're from among the Jewish people or any other people. So I'm always very moved by the getting together. Oh, by the way, it refers to Ishmael and Isaac in the passage both as Abraham's sons. Now, I don't know if I've ever completely linguistically solved every little last thing about it, but the thing is, some translations say that when Abraham is asked to offer Isaac, take your son, your only one. I mean, that could be interpreted different ways. But what I'm absolutely positive about that it shouldn't be interpreted as is that Ishmael isn't Abraham's son. That's just plain wrong. And God never denied Ishmael, first of all, blessing. He certainly didn't deny him importance. And he mattered. And it mattered also to God that he mattered to Abraham. He blessed Ishmael. And, you know, interestingly enough, Ishmael becomes the father of 12 princes. And Jacob becomes the father of 12 princes. There are all these different things, but there's going to come a day where Arabs and Jews and people from every other group can actually and will actually, it has happened as a foretaste. There are groups of people where this does happen. Arabs, Jews, and people from every country you can imagine gathering and praising one God together. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Father of Yeshua, the Savior of the world. And it always stirs me when I read that short little passage to imagine and hope for and not give up on the day when that will be the case. Arabs and Jews and all the rest of the Gentiles praising God together, nobody feeling like they're second-class citizens, nobody feeling like somebody else got a better inheritance, nobody worried about their standing because, when the perfect comes, there won't be any such insecurities. But the Lord can give us the security now not to feel those things in situations where we begin to imagine that we're left out perhaps, we're somehow not fully included. We feel those things in any number of different situations. There really should be fewer and fewer of those experiences amongst the brethren, I would hope, right? None of us should feel less, diminished, or unuseful, or we should come to the place as we just keep our eyes fixed on Yeshua, where we're secure in who we are in Him, who we are as a creation of God, where it's just, in a sense, not that everyone else disappears, but it's just us and the Lord. And we know exactly who we are standing with Him. And then we should be able to also know, I don't mean in every last detail, but exactly who everybody else is, because God has made us all to be His children and given us all things that are for the building up of the body. That really, the people that we think have everything can't do. They can't do what God enables us to do. And I said I was going to read part of this. Should I just take the 5 minutes to read part of this, see how far I get? So this is from Russ Resnick's book, by the way, Gateways to Torah. And so it starts with a verse. After this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of Machpelah before Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And I'm sorry, but I have to stop and read this one little thing out of the Tyndale Old Testament commentaries. It's the Genesis commentary. This really struck me. Moriah reappears only in 2 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles 3:1, where it is identified as the place where God halted the plague of Jerusalem and where Solomon built the temple. Now, that's Moriah where Abraham offered up Isaac. But the next line I find very puzzling. It says, in New Testament terms, this is the vicinity of Calvary. And I thought, what does that even mean? I mean, it is the vicinity of Calvary. That's true in New Testament terms. So the thing is, it makes a reference to the place where Abraham offered up his son. And identifies that the temple was built there. And I mean, I can't prove to you whether like the Holy of Holies was exactly, on the spot where Isaac was about to be offered. I would tend to suspect such things, but but the location is the location. But what that line sounds like to me is, in New Testament terms, this is the vicinity of Calvary. It's like whoosh, gone with the temple, forget the rest of it. And I mean, I don't understand the need for that line to be there. I don't think it adds something, but I think it subtracts something, which can't be subtracted, because Jerusalem is Jerusalem. Jerusalem has always remained Jerusalem. The temple came and the temple was torn down. The temple was rebuilt, it was torn down again. Whether you think there will be a third one or not, it doesn't really matter. The Mishkan was movable, it went all over the place, and then the things that were in the Mishkan, which really were more the essence of what the temple was about than the building itself, all got carried off. They're gone. But Jerusalem has always remained Jerusalem. And it's not going to go away. And so I don't see any competition between the Temple Mount and the Messiah. And to get rid of the temple, I'm not saying that the intention of the author was just to get rid of the temple, but I just don't understand it. That's where the curtain was torn. The curtain that God told them to put there. It was torn when Messiah died. It matters as much as any other location in the Bible. And, well, more than many of them, frankly. So, and can I tell you the exact eternal, mystical, mysterious, and cosmic, whatever, universal meaning of everything about the New Jerusalem that comes down out of heaven from God? No. But I think I can tell you that in the context of it, the temple matters. And that it will be there in whatever form it is. I mean, God came to, He doesn't dwell in a temple made with hands. And really the essence of the Mishkan, which, we sort of understand that it made it possible for God to dwell among them, right? The thing is, it wasn't the Mishkan, the tabernacle that was portable. God didn't live in it. I mean, God's everywhere, but He can be someplace, somebody said. He can be someplace. That doesn't mean He's not everywhere else. You get what I'm saying? He could come and talk to you. He could meet Abraham outside the tent, right? It doesn't mean He's not everywhere else, but He can manifest Himself. And oh, it's a shame that I lost that thought. I said one thing too many. Because whereas sometimes I just think it was a really good thought that needed to be said, and it was nothing. I know it was this time.
The temple's still going to be in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I mean, Jerusalem is forever fixed in God's plans. And I'm really trying to remember what it was. I was going to say, but I think I probably not going to be able to get it back right now. But I do still want to read this. I got going about that one little line in the other book. But you know, I read this great quote from I think a person termed as a radical feminist in one of Mike Brown's articles. I can't quote it to you, but it was a radical feminist talking about men who want to be women. And I would have to say that what she wrote must be terribly politically incorrect and a worse transgression than saying that the emperor isn't wearing anything from the standpoint of, I guess, wokeness. But one of the things basically what she said, I won't use some of the things she referred to, but she sort of defined womanhood, and one of the things she said was, being a woman is painful. And then she indicated some of the things that she was referring to, and not in decent ways, but you know, a little bit graphic. And then she said about men who want to be women, she even grants them that they may exceed women in femininity, but they'll never be women. You get what I'm saying? A person can school themselves in acting feminine, right? I mean, what femininity is, maybe you could argue about, but we all have a certain sense of what we think about it. I think some of those senses are wrong, because you can be feminine without being, you know, like those women of Jerusalem who walked around and wouldn't let their soles of their feet touch the ground, that it talks about in, I think, Isaiah, and you know what's going to happen to them. But we're living in a day that is trying to erase all distinctions, and in a weird way, creating a whole bunch of new ones that are kind of just smoke and mirrors. I mean, they're distinctions that aren't. There are confused things. There are people that need to be understood. There are people that can't actually be themselves because of what society expects of them. Many of them are just born women, and they're saddled with all this junk society puts on them. And the fact that we've robbed the people of the ability to be who they are may be why there's so much clamoring trying to be something that we're not. It's insidious. It's damaging people. But anyway, so I'll just read this. So Abraham buries his wife in the cave of Machpelah in Genesis 23:19, and this is it. Hebron, the name of the city, draws us back from the days of the patriarchs to the tensions of our own time. The building over the cave of Machpelah, which remains a landmark in Hebron, dates back to the 1st century of the Common Era. After the fall of the temple, Hebron became one of the 4 holy cities of Judaism, along with Jerusalem, Tzfat, and Tiberias, and the site of a continuous Jewish presence ever since. Did you hear that? There are people that think the Jews completely disappeared from the land of Israel for like a long time. It's not true. It never happened. Likewise, it is a holy site to Muslims who also honor Father Abraham. At Machpelah today, Jews and Muslims pray almost side by side. In the midst of this illustrious history, we may forget that Machpelah was first the burial place of a woman. In Torah, a wife is not chattel, though twice Abraham treats Sarah like one, saying she is his sister to protect himself. Rather, she is an honored partner, as is evident in the account of Sarah's burial. When Sarah's story began, she seemed passive, following Abraham as he responded to God's call and acquiescing to his ruse that she was his sister. In the relationship with Hagar, she became more active, finally rising up against Hagar and Ishmael and demanding that they be cast out of Abraham's household. The demand was cruel, but it reveals Sarah's underlying insight and concern for the promise of God. God told Abraham, "Listen to her voice. She is aware of my purposes and watching out for your best interests." Indeed, in commenting on this incident, the Midrash Shemot Rabbah 1:1 says that in matters of prophecy, Abraham was secondary to Sarah. Now, you can decide whether that's true or not. I'm just it's just pointing out that the Midrash gives this much honor to Sarah. When God made Adam, he saw that it was not good for him to be alone and decided to make an Ezer Kenegdo. I probably mispronounce it. Literally a helper opposite to him. Rashi interprets this phrase, "If he is worthy, she will be a helper. If he is not worthy, she will oppose him." That's probably worth giving some thought to. Later, God rebuked Adam for listening to the voice of his wife, but it was because she was in the wrong. It is not whether the voice is masculine or feminine that matters, but whether it reflects God's voice. And this, let's see. I guess I'll just read the next paragraph. Sarah receives great honor in the Torah. It announces her death at the age of 127 with great solemnity and recounts in detail the purchase of her burial place, Abraham's first purchase in the land of his inheritance. It is also interesting that the very first place actually really owned by Abraham, and we could say by extension his descendants, though they didn't end up actually being in possession of it for a long period of time, was the burial place of Sarah. And it was bought because she needed a burial place. The matriarch is honored for her true submission. She is not passive but takes initiative on behalf of Abraham and the destiny of her family. She does not suppress her own instincts and desires, but freely places them at the service of Adonai. So this is one of the things I think that's at issue when it comes to all arguments about the place of women, whether women can speak, whether it's okay for a woman to give a sermon. On and on it goes, and there's all kinds of different permutations of it, but I do believe that this is the critical thing. If God chooses to speak through someone, when that person speaks, frankly, it doesn't matter if it's a child or whether the person is male or female. God's authority is in what God is saying. So if it comes out of the mouth of any person because God willed it, that is what authority actually is. Authority isn't something people simply just have. I mean, in a natural sense, yes, that's true. There are people that have authority simply because they're in a position. Some of them shouldn't be in the position, but they do have the authority. But when it comes to the authority of God and who should be listened to, it's not we decide who should ever be listened to and then just make rules about it that go across all of humanity, but rather we shouldn't decide for God who he can speak through. If he speaks something through a woman, then it's God speaking, so it's God's authority. If he speaks through a man, it's the same thing. And sometimes, we shouldn't be proud Even a donkey can do it, at least on a given day. So that doesn't answer all of the questions or put everything to rest. It may not answer any of your questions or put anything to rest for you, but some of these things have come and are coming to rest for me. And I just think we admire Abraham, and we have many things to say about him, but Abraham, Sarah is just as much a part of the story as he is. And without her playing her part, there would be no, well, how much of this would even exist? We shouldn't underestimate just how much came through her, because the scriptures say that she gave birth to Isaac by faith. She conceived by faith. She sounds doubtful at a certain point, but she conceives by faith. She's the one who had the son of the promise develop inside of her body. Abraham didn't do that. I don't see really that they should both be fully honored. And in the accounts of it, I think there should be some correction for some of the problems that are raging in our day about men's and women's roles, and so many people seeming to want to jump into something completely different to escape the difficulty of being themselves. And we need to have compassion for all of those people and see beyond the surface and see what's really going on as much as we can, and then receive from the Lord the things that will bring clarity and healing. There are a lot of people that need healing, and we need to be able to be involved in that. And we won't be able to do it by just having a bunch of hard-edged assumptions and conclusions that we expect everyone else to submit to. The love of God has to come actively into a lot of these situations. And I pray that we will be able to bring it there. Father, I thank you for everyone here. I thank you for your word. I ask you to help us to absorb it, Lord, and strengthen us for this time we're living in. And I ask your blessing on the rest of the time we spend together today. And bless the people, Father. May the Lord bless you and keep you and cause his countenance to shine upon you and give you peace. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yair Adonai panav elecha v'yechunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.